Test, test, 1, 2, test, test, 1, 2. Hold on, I might be having an issue on Twitch's end. Hold on. Test, test, 1, 2, test, test, 1, 2. Alright, it seems to be working. I had a heck of a time trying to get this to work this week. OBS opened, prompted me to update. I went back to Steam because I have OBS through Steam. Updated it. Opened OBS. Crashed. Opened OBS again. It prompted me to update again. I go back to Steam and there is no update. So I had to, so after trying this about 2 or 3 times, I uninstalled OBS, reinstalled OBS, and had to set OBS up again. So yeah, I'm a little late. I'm more than a little late, in all honesty, and I probably won't be doing this very long. I have not been sleeping the best over the past few nights. Honestly, if I didn't have to do this stream, I would have already taken a sleeping pill and gone to bed. I do not condone using medication to sleep, personally. I don't like how it feels, I don't like how it does to me, but I'm at the point to where I need sleep. So I'm going to bite the bullet and take the blasted pill. Because insomnia sucks. Now, with all my complaining and issues aside, we are going to be working on red, white, blue, and green again. If we don't finish it today, I might swap it out for another thing and we'll just do it in a rotation. I don't know yet. As always, if you want to check out the story, the link is in the chat. But yeah, the story itself follows, it's a My Hero Academia fanfiction based off of a writing prompt that was on DeviantArt a few years back. The prompt was pick 5 characters, then pick 3 of those characters to put the other 4 into their universe. Or adapt those other 4 into the universe. Sorry about the background noise. I'm turning my heater on. It is getting cold. I swear, last week, it was hot all weekend. People were walking around in shorts and short sleeves, and I actually worked up a sweat as I mowed the lawn. This week, I'm back under a blanket with a space heater. What the heck is up with our weather here recently? Anyways, back to the subject at hand. Well, writing the summary of how I would fold the characters into it, I had a lot of fun with it. And ended up writing out two basic idea plot lines for two different stories: The Three Worthless Heroes and Red, White, Blue, and Green. There was one other, but I still have the outline. I haven't started on it. The the five I originally picked were Black Clover, My Hero Academia, Ben 10, Little Witch Academia, and Hero Man. I believe there's a Discord link in my bio. Uh, to my server. Hold on, give me a second. I'll give you the link to the server. Anyways, where did I leave off? Right. This one, Red, White, Blue, and Green, is set in the My Hero Academia universe. Adding in the main characters from Little Witch Academia and Hero Man. The name Red, White, Blue, and Green comes from the various characters' eye color, and actually is played upon in the first chapter, with it being split into three sections. I should have split it into three chapters, but I didn't think of that at the time, because I thought they'd be a bit too short. Red the Witch, Akko, has red eyes. Blue, the boy, Joey, has blue eyes. And White, the broken toy. Hero Man, whenever he uses attacks, his eyes glow white. And his eyes are white in his toy form. And Green, the successor. Izuku is All Might's successor. Red, white, blue, green. The story is based around something called the Will of the World. Every time the world was spiraling towards a collapse, some unknown force of the world itself stepped in and set things right and set it down a different path. first time magical threats, otherworldly entities, beings of colossal power, all that stuff was running rampant. So the climb Solus was created, and with it, the 9 old witches were able to create the Sorcerer's Stone and all this other stuff to grant magic. However, as the threat waned, as did the power of the climb Solus. And without the climb Solus to make more incredibly powerful magical sources, as did, and the number of witches increased, so did the overall power of magic decrease. Till eventually it was more like a secret society thing. But with the sheer explosion of the human population, thanks to technology, the lack of predators, yada yada yada, blah blah blah. Resources started to run out, things got a little crazy. It looked like the world was barreling towards an Armageddon. And that's when the first quirks showed up. This caused a lot of division. It did cause a lot of fighting, but it didn't get nearly as bad as it could have gotten. We're talking Fallout's level of bad. So, as things start to balance out, keyword start, but so sorry, I'm rereading my notes, trying to get everything done so I can get actually into this. Uh, and then All for One happened. The will of the world created quirks to try and fix a problem, and a quirk that was never supposed to exist appeared by accident, thus leading to the second fully empowered creation of the will of the world, being one for all. The stockpiling quirk that could be passed down. However, for decades, these two abilities have been passed from one successor to another. And while they are never at their full power, unless a true threat to the world is, unless there's a true threat to the world, they are still there in the background. While One for All was never grew to the point it was strong enough to defeat All for One, it did manage to sort of balance him out and keep him from spreading his power base. If he had actually managed to expand his power base to become a global threat, it would have gotten stronger far faster. But since that never happened, it never entered full power mode. Now suddenly, a third creation of the will of the world has shown up, which has those who are in the know about the source of these powers scrambling to figure out what the heck is going on, because the only time these a new one of these has shown up, it's done so in response to an apocalyptic level threat. So now with the three, so now with the third will of the world power in play, and the other two receiving new successors, this is where the story begins. I really hope you can't hear that. Sorry, just sorry. New headset. Forgot to mute the mic. Ate small snack. Sorry, finished my snack. All right, let's give me a second. I want to listen to what I wrote last time, and then I'll get this started again. Come on. Okay, so yeah, I know you can't hear it because I didn't. I was trying to rush. I didn't hook it up to play just this, but the text-to-speech readers with Word have been acting up. All right. Toshinori couldn't help but chuckle at the idea of something so massive and powerful being so fixated on something so small and fragile. He spiked the ball back over to the kids and watched as they continued to play. It wasn't long before a few more people showed up to see what was going on. Between the massive behemoth, the occasional appearance of a barrier wall to deflect volleyballs, a girl randomly transforming into a winged elephant or a mouse, a plethora of cartoonish animals to increase her own mobility, and a boy literally wreathed in glowing sparks, running and jumping at clearly above human capability. It truly was only a matter of time before they attracted more people. And soon, several games of volleyball were played up and down the net. Thankfully, he had thought ahead enough to bring more than one ball, each colored a different color, so they wouldn't get confused. A few kids were laughing and blasting the nearby water with their powers, and another local hero, one he didn't recognize, was giving them tips on how to aim. It was fun, it was chaotic, and by the end of the day, thankfully, no one got truly hurt. A few scrapes, a few bruises, but nothing that a quick bandage and a laugh couldn't fix. I swear, whatever issue they're having, it's making it worse. The remaining days to the entrance exam went by in a flash. With the beach cleared and the kids refreshed from their day off, Toshinori had focused more on practical training. Not quite what they'd actually teach them in UA, but then again, he wasn't quite qualified for that. Nezu had basically given him an outline for the main points he needed to hit by when, as well as several example documents of what resources he'd had at his disposal. In all honesty, while he got to pick what they did for the day, he had very little actual control over his own classes. He just hoped he didn't screw this up. This whole plan was kind of rushed to begin with. And while he'd likely be able to get he'd be he'd been issued his teaching license, he was, in all honesty, still working his way through the actual coursework. All honesty, They had him take a test on a graded curve, and he passed, barely. Even then, so he'd have to retest at the end of the year and get an actual passing grade. But that was a headache for another time. Toshinori thought as he looked down at the UA courtyard from above. Waiting for his 3 pupils to arrive. Izuku was nervous, to say the least. He, Joy, and Akko had been studying with each other to prep for the written courses after All Might's assignments every day for the past month. And he was pretty sure he could pass the written portion. And he wasn't too worried about Joey. While the boy clearly wasn't top of his class, he wasn't stupid by any means. He just wasn't book smart in the same way a lot of the top students in class were. When their laundry machine had broken down, he pulled a screwdriver out of his backpack and had fixed the thing in less than 20 minutes. He had rebuilt Hero Man out of nothing but spare knockoff parts. And as far as he could tell, it should actually work if work. He was clearly smart. He was more worried about Akko. While it was no doubt in his mind she could handle the practical exam, Akko just had a really hard time focusing. She wasn't dumb. She knew a lot. It just wasn't always clear what she knew about. She struggled with things like Japanese history or math. But actually knew more about Japanese folklore than he did. And he was actually born in the country. The only one of the three who was actually born in the country. Despite this, she had really buckled down and tried exceptionally hard to study for this exam, so he truly hoped she'd pass. Unfortunately, lost in his own little world of his own worries and the worries for his friends, he didn't notice the trick tile. Unknown to anyone other than the teachers, the actual first part of the exam started before you even entered. The moment you entered the grounds. various cameras hidden around the testing area were watching, tracking. Seeing how the students handled stress. Who was willing to stop and give a pep talk? Who was willing to belittle others? While being an asshole at this point was very unlikely unless you were a truly horrible person to get you kicked out. It would be noted and weighed against you. If it came time to decide over one over the other. Small little inconveniences were part of it. Broken pencil sharpeners, locker doors that won't close right, or change the combination. Or in this case, a little trip tile. Identical to every other except for a small spring mechanism that on days like today would cause it to shift underfoot. Izuku stumbled forward. Only to find himself yanked high into the air when two different people had tried to help him at once. One was a brown-haired girl who had apparently removed his gravity to keep him from falling. The other was Akko, who had overreacted, but thankfully not too greatly, and had simply conjured a golden string that was currently wrapped around his waist, holding him in place like a balloon. It was meant just to pull him back so he didn't land on his face. The smaller wand she currently held looked like little more than a simple twig, and like the climb solace, like her other one, could morph into a simple bracelet. She had explained it to him that where her main one acted as a focus and amplifier, This one was actually meant to hinder her. It could still act as a focus, but since it put a hard cap on how much energy it could pass through it, had a hard cap on how much energy could pass through it. Which, while it didn't fully compensate for Akko's overwhelming power, it did help her control it. It was explained by Woodworth to basically be like training wheels. Instead of fully removing them, they had simply raised them. So they were there if she needed them, but they wouldn't be in the way if she didn't. In reality, the simple wand had been given to her by Woodworth, claiming while the Clive Solus was powerful and versatile, anyone in the magic community could easily figure out what it was, and it might be best for her to use a less powerful wand until she got full control over it. And yeah, I'm sorry guys, I'm just gonna have to call it there for today. I'm drawing a blank past this point, and I am, like I said, very tired. And I was just trying to make it to at least an hour. It's a little short, but I'm sorry. Anyways, this is Wrecker signing off, and hopefully next time we'll have a much better run of it.